Good afternoon. We'll call the meeting of the California First Responders Network Board to order. First order of business is roll. Scott Edson.
I want you to know I feel like I've been put in the corner over here, but I'm here.
Good place.
We can swap name tags over here, Scott.
Okay, Ferdinand Melendez. Okay. Jeff Hunter. Sheriff Jamile. Chief Scott Howland.
Here.
Chief Nathan Tronick. Chief Kevin Guerrero.
Here.
Bill Hartley.
Here.
Corey Reynolds.
Here.
Stephanie Tom. And Jeff Lee. Okay, we have a quorum. First order of business is approval of the minutes from last meeting. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Hartley. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Chief Howland. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? The motion carries. FirstNet presentation. I'm sorry. Next up will be Verizon presentation. There we are.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Majorana. I am the senior leader at Verizon, responsible for our public sector practice, including public safety. I feel very honored to be here today amongst so many important customers that rely on Verizon today, as well as leaders within the community that support our fellow citizens every day, whether the sun is shining or the sky is gray. And I'm here to talk about all that Verizon is doing to continue to earn your business, but more importantly, to elevate our deliverables of solutions and services that will provide and currently are providing you with the necessary communication tools that you need to do your jobs best and to serve our communities. The agenda today is to review our public safety commitment, to offer up some additional discussion and collaboration on our public safety-centric services, to give you insight on our vision of interoperability. And we're also very proud here to be in Sacramento to talk about 5G. As you may know, Sacramento is one of 4 U.S. cities that Verizon has announced will be commercially available 5G services on October 1. I have a team with me here today of local representatives, people that support the California public safety community, people that are responsible for building, operating, and enhancing our network. And they are available certainly for follow-up. Ideally, we have interest from this audience for continued discussions to develop even better dialogue and collaboration on how we can do what this slide indicates. At Verizon, we've got a culture to rise up and deliver for our customers across our entire customer base, but there isn't a more important customer than those that support our communities, in particular our first responders. Our belief is that we have the opportunity and obligation to serve those that serve, and we recognize that your dependence on our technology to do your jobs to protect our communities is paramount. And it's our objective here today to share with you how you can continue to depend on Verizon. I know that after my remarks, we're going to hear from FirstNet. I want to put on record that Verizon is very supportive of the ultimate mission of FirstNet. We believe the mission of FirstNet is to deliver best-in-class communication technologies to first responders to help them better serve their communities. We believe that FirstNet is the tide that's rising or raising all boats, and because of FirstNet, more companies like Verizon, AT&T, as well as other solutions providers across the ecosystem of technology are coming to the table to help create better capabilities for first responders. I'm going to speak to right now the capabilities that Verizon is bringing to market. Many of these have already been deployed to help deliver on what we call the public safety promise. These are the features and functionality that public safety has asked for to enhance their capabilities to effectively communicate and effectively respond. Verizon has launched Private Core, which segregates traffic, provides better security and application performance for our public safety customers. We've enabled preemption capability, as well as mobile broadband priority and wireless priority voice services in partnership with Homeland Security, OEC. You may know that companies like Verizon right now are preparing for Hurricane Florence out east, and we know that a major requirement to serve those communities that will be impacted, including the public safety customers relying on our services, are deployable network assets. Verizon has an arsenal of deployable network assets to be able to bring in emergency communications, emergency capacity to help communities effectively communicate. We are working with other industry partners to deliver improvement to mission-critical push-to-talk. We are working with industry partners to bring forth applications, situational awareness, command and control, different capabilities that first responders are asking for to help, again, do their jobs and serve our communities best. Again, we are speaking with customers all over America, including here in California, about these features and these solutions on a daily basis, and look forward to doing that more with the audience today. The features and functionality and capabilities that I referenced on the prior slide are really only as good as the network that they are operating on. Verizon is proud to have earned a legacy of having the best and most reliable network. Companies like RootMetrics and J.D. Powers and others consistently rank and rate Verizon as having the best network. We cover more than 322 million people and have square miles of in excess of 2.5 billion. Or million, I'm sorry. That coverage is critical. You'll see here on the smaller print that we cover 450,000 square miles more than our nearest competitor in the industry. Trust me, California contributes significantly to that 450,000 mile coverage advantage. So our work that we've done over decades to build, operate, support, engineer this network has earned the business and the customer confidence that we continue to have. And again, the services that I referenced on the prior slide are all built to operate on this network that you've all become very dependent on and known to be the best. Bringing it down specifically to California, Verizon has invested more than $5 billion in wireless network coverage, capacity, and performance in the state of California since 2015. We know that it is our job to provide you with the best-in-class network possible to deliver the capabilities that you need so very much of us. There's a whole lot that goes into this. We have very smart, dedicated network engineers that are leveraging new and innovative technologies like carrier aggregation, 4G LTE small cell deployments, and other capabilities to not only provide the coverage that you know we have, but the capacity and network performance that you need here in 2018 and beyond. And as I indicated earlier, we're very proud to be in the position to launch 4G wireless broadband. We call it ultra-wideband broadband service right here in Sacramento and Los Angeles on October 1st. We are very interested in meeting with public safety to exploit this technology and further discover the incredible solutions that we can deliver on a 5G network to enhance the capabilities of our public safety and first responder customers. The advantages, and I'll get into 5G in a second, let me keep going. The network that I've described here is also capable of running what we call public safety-centric smart community solutions. We offer a solution into the marketplace and are about to launch other services such as real-time response system, evidence management, as well as gunshot detection, a terrific partnership that we have with a company called ShotSpotter. Let me talk about interoperability a bit. I don't find it ironic that yesterday was the 17th anniversary of 9/11, and I can personally state that the Monday after 9/11, I was driving in through the Lincoln Tunnel with a whole host of flip phones back then, headed down to Chinatown to provide businesses and citizens within the impacted areas of New York City with very important communication. Verizon has a record and history of being very bold, taking swift action, and bringing back that part of New York City and getting that stock exchange open. Regardless, we all know that FirstNet and the FirstNet board, the 9/11 Commission, ultimately came to the decision to put forth this program based on the events of 9/11. One of the biggest challenges of 9/11 was the failure of interoperability. Based on the customer base that Verizon has earned in this segment over the past decades, based on the coverage and network advantages that we offer, and based on the capabilities that we're bringing to market, like private network, priority, and preemption, we believe the best path forward for public safety is true interoperability with the FirstNet provider, specifically AT&T. And while we all know that AT&T and Verizon and other mobile phone carriers can communicate effectively with voice, data, and text messaging. Verizon's vision of interoperability is to ensure that using the common 3GPP standards with which FirstNet was built on this 4G LTE network, that we can get to a point where a Verizon customer using Verizon services, public safety that is, can effectively communicate with an AT&T customer on FirstNet. And that goes for not only voice, data, and text, but it goes for end-to-end priority and preemption. It goes for the ability to share experiences on the application ecosystem. It goes to the ability of mission-critical push-to-talk as well as device-to-device off-network communications. For the record, Verizon is ready, willing, and able to move this discussion forward and have the necessary engineering work done to enable this vision for this incredibly important customer. Again, Verizon believes in the vision of FirstNet. We believe, though, based on our capabilities and our capacity and our experience in this segment, including our coverage and network advantages, we can help enable or exponentially enable the true capabilities of FirstNet. Let me get back to 5G because I think this is going to play well. I know this is going to play well in public safety. Again, we're launching here in Sacramento, Los Angeles at the 1st of October. Verizon has a history of delivering best-in-class networks, and that will play forward with 5G. Our portfolio of spectrum, specifically millimeter wave spectrum, our leading fiber investments, as well as our leading small cell investments will deliver the promise of 5G ultimately to public safety and first responders. The exponentially lower latency for voice and video applications, real-time remote control, automation, as well as performance of cloud-based applications will provide public safety significant advantages down the line. We're excited about 5G. We're committing to have the best, most effective 5G rollout, and we look forward to the fine people of Sacramento experiencing it first. With that said, I want to again thank this audience. We appreciate all that you do to serve your communities. We appreciate your long-standing trust, your long-standing confidence in working with Verizon. And again, my team and I are here for the rest of the session to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, Kevin Guerrero, CalFRN. How many deployables do you guys currently have?
I don't have the number of deployables committed to memory. We can certainly get back to you, but what I will say is we have enough deployables to serve the need of our customers. We mentioned, or I mentioned earlier today, that we have a significant rollout of not only deployables, but network survivability assets like fuel, generators, batteries across our nation, and certainly for those impacted now down in, ultimately down in the mid-Atlantic for Hurricane Florence. So we can get you the specific number of deployables. I would also be smart to tell you that in addition to deployables, having battery backup, having fuel backup and generator backup at our cell sites and our switches is critical to the survivability of our network. And recently we've even gone as far as having the capability for satellite backhaul when there is no fiber. So Kevin, we'd be happy to sit down specifically with the forestry and fire protection team that you're part of to lay out all the capabilities, including number of deployables, including what we have here in California, including what we can do to help you and your organization serve your communities. We've done that with many states around the country. I'm sure we've done it here, but we can do it again.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Jeanette Kennedy from FirstNet.
Thank you very much. I'm Jeanette Kennedy. I'm with the First Responder Network Authority and the Government Affairs Representative for California. I want to thank everyone for coming today. I just wanted to, again, reiterate how much we appreciate this board's participation and dedication and input into the last 2 years and more, almost 3 years, into providing, input into this nationwide program. We spend many hours with you on the road. We worked with our communities and our jurisdictions to really understand what it is that the FirstNet program could do to enable critical communications for Californians and public safety here. This board here was created specifically to provide input into the FirstNet program and to aggregate and voice the collective California experience for us so we can improve the program. And I'm here today to affirm to you that we're going to continue that consistent support, and we appreciate Cal OES, Pat Mallon, Mitch and Budge, all of your dedication to this project. And so, as you know, the governor opted in to FirstNet in December, and since then, FirstNet and our partner, AT&T, has made significant strides in deploying the FirstNet dedicated network throughout the country. FirstNet is active today. It is live today. You can use it today. And they've been working very hard with the California wildfires, and my colleague here, Abigail, will provide more input on what they're doing. But from the federal point of view, we really want to reiterate that this is a continued partnership and that we are working together. We have contractual obligations with AT&T to ensure they are committing to doing what they said they're going to do. And what they said they were going to do is based off of all of the input that you had and all of the dedication and the drive that you made here with us in partnership together. And so with that, I'll hand it off to Abigail.
Thank you. Jeanette, a couple of questions. Where, or perhaps if you can't answer, maybe AT&T can, where do we stand with the application, that can ride on the system? Where are we with the deployment of the core?
Oh, yes, of course.
And then lastly, particularly since we are watching a storm come in from the east
Right.
onto the East Coast, what is FirstNet's plan to support that operation?
Sure. So we actually launched the FirstNet dedicated core in March of this year. So for FirstNet customers who are using FirstNet SIMs, they will have that separate dedicated communication line that all of the traffic will run over. That's working today. In terms of the state RAN deployments, AT&T has committed to deploying early. Abigail can talk a little bit more about the California plan. But from a nationwide perspective, AT&T is committed to deploying a 5-year plan in 3 years. So you will have that initial footprint of the Band 14 build-out earlier than normal with applications like mission critical push-to-talk. We're working very hard with the industry at large. We're very active in the global 3GPP standardization process and working with other vendors and countries and really driving home why we need those types of services that you all demand, right? It's not just mission critical push-to-talk. It's, direct mode devices. It's, this whole different set of services and features that right now doesn't really exist in the commercial marketplace. So we're using our leverage as a federal entity to reach out to the industry and work with other players to make sure that we can deliver those sooner, right? At a certain point, the market, where this is America, we're going to help with the market is going to drive a lot of these factors. But we're hoping that through this project, because of our scale, that's really going to make a business case as well as the public purpose case of why we need to have these devices and products delivered earlier. In terms of applications, we have an applications marketplace. And in there, you will find applications that have been FirstNet reviewed. And so that indicates to users that the FirstNet Authority has looked at those, and it looks at things like the user experience, the usability on battery life, a lot of security features. And it wants to ensure that for users that there's someone who's looking out for them so that they may not even know how to find those kind of details themselves. So we're really trying to expand on that. In terms of devices, if you look at NIST.gov, it might be NIST.doc.gov, but they publish a list of FirstNet certified devices that was required in the law, but it is there, so you can look back at the different years, and it's updated pretty regularly, so you can see which devices are usable on the FirstNet network, and there are going to be more all the time. There's not just handsets, there's other types of dongles or other kind of things too. But, primarily you can find those on NIST's website. If you don't have it, I can send it to you as well. So we're doing a lot to really encourage the ecosystem. If you may have seen the headline, but our board approved our budget. And this is our first budget. We're actually putting into an account money to ensure the longevity of the program and the money that will be reinvested back into the network. As you recall, we are a non-for-profit organization, so we can't ever make money or hold money. All the income that we receive is going to go back into the FirstNet network. So it's not going to be for my huge federal salary bonus or my exotic trips. It's all going to be dedicated and rolled back into public safety. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nate.
You talked about the app marketplace has the apps that are FirstNet reviewed. Is there an ability for us to look at that without having a FirstNet account to see what is offered and
Yes.
what's available?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be great. If you could share
Yeah.
that, that would be wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Jeanette?
Hi, Jeanette. Mitch Medigovich. I was just curious, what are you most excited about right now in terms of either devices and/or applications that you see kind of on the horizon that or is already out that we should be aware of?
Right. I think for devices, what I'm most excited about, there was a major device manufacturer today that announced they're including Band 14 in their new device coming out. So that's exciting to see, we're actually communicating to the marketplace that they need to include Band 14. And that's going to drive scale, which is one of the things we were set up to do. In the applications market, we've recently revised some of the review procedures so that developers will find it less cumbersome to actually get into the marketplace. So I think that may encourage more folks to look into our program more. I think, as other people noted in the field, we've solved the interoperability problem, right? With 3GPP and these international standards, we've solved the interoperability problem, right? We're now trying to figure out what's the next level of getting people to better coordinate with each other. And over-the-top applications is one of those features, and that's just going to continue to grow.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Abigail Baker from AT&T. And assisted by Mark Rose.
Now it's green. Thanks to the board for the time today. Mark Rose with AT&T. I'm the area vice president for our public sector organization, which includes public safety and all of our business with California. Before I turn it over to Abigail, I just wanted to again thank you for your time, and we're going to provide a brief update specific to the California FirstNet build-out and answer any questions that we can.
Wonderful. Can you hear me? Okay. I want to thank you all again, as the same as Mark, for having us here. And this is my first time presenting, so I'm very excited. I want to thank Jeanette. With AT&T and the partnership that we have, 25 years with the FirstNet Authority is absolutely wonderful, and they've just been just a great partner, as well as the state of California, now that I'm getting so involved in it. And I'm really enjoying it, so I want to thank you. So today we're here to provide an update of where we are with FirstNet for this third quarter of 2018. I think someone did mention that FirstNet, the state of California, opted in, I believe it was December 28th, 2017. I believe it was the last state, but we're very proud that they did. We had a little party before New Year's to celebrate. But this presentation is to provide an update as to where we've been and where we are now. So if you'll just jump to the next slide, unless I have a clicker. Oh, I do. I'll let you do it. All right, so nationally, we have over 2,500 agencies, and we have over 150,000 subscribers as a whole. This is as of August 29th, and we can get into any kind of details as necessary for the state of California. If any agencies would like to know, different types of agencies and so forth in the state, and we can meet with you at a separate time. Okay. Right now we have on air, we started out in Q1 of 2018 with band 14 overlays on our existing towers, and we had a build of 24. We've gotten to the point of having band 14 overlays of 306 and a total build of 53. So that's where we are in terms of 3 quarters. And I'm very proud to say that we've done an excellent job in trying to continue our commitment with the state of California that we have in our letter with the state of California. Next slide. And come September 30th, we will officially have our FirstNet deployables that complement and are part of the FirstNet subscriber experience, above and beyond what we already provide with all of the deployables that you see in the state of California going out to the fires and the other areas that need that attention. 6 are dedicated for the state of California. We have 3 additional deployables in Nevada and Arizona. And our emergency response time, and this is, when I learned this, part of my role with the state is 7 hours. I thought, boy, with California traffic, that's going to be tough. But at the same time, it's what we're dedicated to do. And we have the ability to provide these deployables to our FirstNet agencies within a 30-day request and approval of that request. So think perhaps a parade or somewhere where someone thinks we're going to have a large volume of folks in the area. Nationwide, we've got 72 FirstNet SAC Colts, and they're scheduled to be completed and deployed in their designated locations by September 30th. And we have already provided to FirstNet customers throughout the U.S. over 50 deployables when they requested them. So we have this ability to provide these deployables to our FirstNet customers that are dedicated to those FirstNet customers. Next slide.
Can we ask questions along the way, or would you prefer us to wait till the end? Okay, so
Absolutely.
thank you so much. The nationwide numbers there, is that including the 6 that go forward? Right there. So it says the 6 for state of California, the 3 that were already out, then the 72 that are the SAT Colts that you have satellite trucks that you have, those are not part of the inventory that you're talking about above, correct? Or is that including?
No, so just for some clarity, so the 72 are the nationwide dedicated FirstNet sat cults dedicated to the FirstNet program. Of those, 6 plus the additional 3 that are mentioned above are dedicated to California.
So
What-
they're in part of that total number? So I
That's
just want-
correct.
Okay.
And
thanks.
this is, the numbers you see up here are further a subset of our National Disaster Recovery Program. So for instance, as you're familiar, when we have fires, we deploy into those areas our NDR, National Disaster Recovery. We deploy those assets for the general public as well as for public safety for our general core network. These are at your beck and call because you are FirstNet. So these are for when you have a planned event or an unplanned event, just for public safety incident command.
Okay, great, thank you. If you can back up one more slide. Thank you. Are there any delays or issues with the build-out on your Band 14 that we should be aware of to help facilitate that for you? And then,
I am not aware of any at this time, but if there are, we definitely will let you know.
thank you. And then what's our total target of overlays that we should be shooting for, so the board can kind of have an idea what our end state is for that, do you know?
It's in the commitment letter.
Yeah, we have that number, Mitch. We actually presented it to the team last week. We'll get that for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question for the next slide, please. So you mentioned, about California traffic. Just wanted some clarity here. When you say emergency response time, is that from time of request to wheels rolling, or is that time of request to estimated time on scene anywhere in the state? What do you mean by that?
When you say, are you speaking about the 7-hour
Yes.
requirements from the time of the request?
Time of request to you getting wheels rolling, or time of request to you arriving at a scene anywhere in the state?
I will need to check and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to be very accurate.
Okay.
Any other questions?
By the way, I didn't say it, but this is good news. I'm grateful to see that the 6 are there, and that's wonderful. And then I'm also happy to see the progress that you're making on the build-out, so I don't want you to think it's just more RFIs only.
And just for the record, Ken, we've actually deployed already these FirstNet assets for some of the fire response we've had this year, in addition to the typical NDR coverage.
So does your numbers on the new build sites, does that also include your CAF2 sites, or are those in addition? The Connect America Fund sites?
Right, were those included in the roll-up, in this new roll-up? Yeah.
Yes, CAF2 is included.
We have a breakdown, Pat, that we can share with you that breaks it out. But yes, this is the cumulative number.
Yeah, because last month, Scott Andrews reported 97 sites, Band 14 sites on the air, and 324 Band 14 sites that are in construction. So you're pretty well on your way there. And then also 18 CAF2 sites and 43 sites in construction, with 13 on the, new build sites 13 plus 34 in construction. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, we'll take the next slide. So here's some more of the updates. I just brought a phone that has a FirstNet SIM in it. I believe from Scott's update, we now have devices that show FirstNet. So I can pass this around for you to take a quick look at. Please bring it back to me. It's an AT&T company-issued device. I know. But anyways, getting back to that, FirstNet is available today on the entire network. I want to make sure that we're all crystal clear about that. The entire AT&T network provides the priority and the preemption today for our customers, of which we have many in the state of California, you saw from the previous slide, throughout the nation. Our our network is monitored 24/7, 365. You're all in the same business of being in the business of 24/7, 365. Anything can happen any time of day. So we're dedicated to that in reviewing any kind of security issues with respect to that in our operations centers located in the U.S. And we have so many, and I think you all heard a major company provide an update on their devices today. I don't want to get into the details because I don't quite have them yet, because I think they just did it down in Cupertino a couple hours ago. But besides the announcement of those, we have so many ruggedized devices that can withstand the heat, temperature, all kinds of weather, even have complete waterproof capabilities that can run on the FirstNet network. And all of those are located on firstnet.org, firstnet.com, and AT&T. And we're in the process of providing, because you are our white glove customers that we love to call, because of our care and dedication, because of the 25-year commitment that we have with the FirstNet Authority, we provide a very white glove treatment when it comes to onboarding our customers. We will not just deliver a device to your doorstep via UPS and you got to go figure out how to do it. We actually have mobile vehicles with personnel that'll come and get those devices set up, port over any kind of information that you need if necessary if you have a new device. But we are really dedicated, and we have an entire team to do that, to provide that white glove onboarding experience with a customer care line that is in the United States, answered by a voice and has a name, and about 50% of those folks are all prior public safety folks. So they understand that when you make a call to them, it's urgent. It must be taken care of right away. And then lastly, I want to touch on a new program we just launched in September, the beginning of September, which is what we're referring to as our subscriber paid program. Because we understand, like many of you, all have two devices, an agency device and then your personal device. And if you're off duty, why not be able to take advantage of the priority and preemption that the FirstNet network provides, built with AT&T? So we've provided a way for our folks that are sworn public safety individuals that are employed with public safety agencies to take advantage of a rate with credits towards a family plan and other opportunities to get on the FirstNet network individually. And we'd be happy to talk to you about that. We do have some information about it, but it's just another way of showing our dedication to public safety and the need to have that priority and preemption, even if you're off duty. You've got to be always on. So with that said, I am happy to answer any further questions or provide any other information that I'm available to do today. Otherwise, I do want to say that anyone that is here, we are happy to meet with you to go over any questions you might have specific to your agencies and what your needs may be, because we want to focus on where your communication levels are, where you want them to be, and work with you through that. We're not here just to provide a great slide on what we're doing and all those kinds of things. We are here for 25 years with the federal government. And so we want to make sure we do a good job because we are committed to it and we have a contract to do so. So I want to thank you again, and I'm ready for any questions, I hope.
Abigail, Corey Reynolds representing Bayrix. Hi. Just on your last point there, just if you could talk a little bit about your policy or approach to selling, to the direct sale of these FirstNet services to people in AT&T stores, validating public safety credentials or sharing that information with communications managers within their home agency so they understand that that phone is now a FirstNet phone?
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. So They have the ability, because many agencies now in the state of California are current customers. So some of these agencies are going to be providing a way for those customers, those individuals, to have the ability to get onto the FirstNet network with their individual devices. So they're hosting things like table days, and when I say that, we literally have vehicles that have AT&T with them and folks that come out that have devices within. So agencies can have their own event, or if it's a smaller agency, we'll go out to that agency and give that white glove treatment, not only for the agency itself, but also for the individuals. But then there's also the option of going into an AT&T store, and I did say that this program was launched on September 6th, and our AT&T stores are ready for those folks that want to walk in. Credentials are required. There will be a verification process, but it's a good program to look into and have the capabilities for FirstNet. Now, the only thing I'm going to say is it is for that sworn person or emergency services person only. Your 16-year-old won't be able to take advantage of that. So while they'd like to possibly, but at the same time, it's important to keep our first responders on the FirstNet network.
And just clarification, does then that information go back from AT&T to the home agency that a new subscriber with their personal line has come on?
Through the verification process, yeah.
Okay.
So, and I'd be happy to provide more details specific to your business and folks.
The process is, there's actually two different processes. We have a kind of a bottom-up and a top-down for an agency who would want to be proactive and work collectively with us. They actually can bring a list, if you will, to us, and we can push that out. Or again, if they prefer not to do that and just prefer to have the subscriber manage to it, we push the subscriber information up to the agency.
So with that, how are you ensuring that personal devices issued don't inadvertently override issued devices that are part of the agency? Obviously, it's no longer a public safety network if everybody can get on with multiple devices. So how are you managing those devices from a priority perspective to make sure that somebody's personal device doesn't override somebody's state-issued or agency-issued device?
The FirstNet network is, I was passing around my phone, it is a FirstNet dedicated network for public safety. So whether it be a personal device or an agency-provided device, it will have the priority and preemption because it is public safety.
So there's no distinction in the network between a personal device for a sworn versus an issued device that's used specifically for day-to-day use. Is that correct?
Not from a day-to-day use perspective. As we've given many of you in the past, the overview of our Uplift tool. So in the case of a incident, it would become into the incident command's control to actually do that if they wanted to prioritize certain devices over others. But from a network perspective, the network initially in a day-to-day use would treat them the same because they are a eligible FirstNet subscriber.
All right, and is your priority feature and preemption feature available without a FirstNet SIM being in the device?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Excuse me, clarification. My understanding was that if you were a subscriber, whether you had a BAN 14 chip or not, is that if you were a FirstNet subscriber, even with your commercial band, you would go through the FirstNet core and you would have Uplift capability. Am I incorrect?
There's two answers.
Or do you only have Uplift capability if you're BAN 14?
Yeah.
Can you hear me if I stand up
Yeah.
or should I squat?
Phone a friend.
Okay. Sorry. So, most of you, Melissa Rother with AT&T. So to answer your question, Pat, in regards to the Band 14 chip. I just want to start kind of at the basics. So if you have a FirstNet SIM, Band 14 is driven by device, not by SIM. But if you had a FirstNet SIM, you would be eligible for Uplift, and your traffic would be running through the FirstNet core. If you had a consumer SIM, or what I carry as an AT&T customer, you would not be eligible for Uplift, and your traffic would not be running through the FirstNet core.
So agencies that sign on to FirstNet through AT&T today that do not have a Band 14 chip device, Band 14, they cannot be uplifted.
They can be uplifted. So for example, if I had an iPhone 10 and I stuck a FirstNet SIM in it, my iPhone 10 does not access Band 14, but because I have a FirstNet SIM in my iPhone 10, I can be uplifted.
That's what I thought. Okay.
It's the SIM. Yeah, Band 14.
It's the
Band
SIM
14.
It's the
Yeah,
SIM
that's
that's
what- that's-
required for Uplift.
That's the clarification I wanted to make, is that there are some agencies out there that have older phones that, that are not compatible with Band 14, but as long as they have a FirstNet chip in them, or SIM card, they can be uplifted.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make clear.
So I have something to ask, and you made the comment that during the uplift process, during an incident by the incident commander, the way I understand it is if you have an incident with, let's just say, 10 agencies, and you decide that you want to uplift people from those 10 different agencies, then we have to get a hold of each of those 10 agencies' administrator to do the uplift. There's not one person that can do all 10 agencies at one time and uplift them. Is that correct?
So I'm going to use just a scenario for that, just to kind of make it simple. If CalFire was the incident commander on an incident and you had 10 different fire departments responding to your incident, you would be able to uplift users from all 10 agencies with your uplift tool.
How would CalFire know the phone number to each one of those devices that was there?
You would have to be contacted from the 10 different agencies and provided in a CSV file or a list of some sort with those numbers. It's done by
So
a
at 3 o'clock in the
CTN.
morning, we need to get a hold of each administrator
So
and
we've
get that
been
list? Or we
working with-
pre-planned it, right?
Yeah, we've been working with agencies when we've been onboarding them to have that Excel spreadsheet or CSV file pre-prepared and work with their local agencies to provide that in advance when they go on FirstNet as well. So that's not something that they're trying to scramble and get at 3 a.m. in the morning. It's something that they already have communicated.
We have a portal which we refer to as local control, and that is part of that white glove treatment / onboarding process that we provide for agencies, and we help them set up with surrounding agencies for that interoperability, those numbers and so forth, prior to any, hopefully not at 3 a.m. incident, as you mentioned, so.
And Scott, without getting into any additional details, I know you were part of a recent demo of that tool and provided some very valuable feedback. We will be doing a follow-up that I think is going to show you some forthcoming features that will answer your question a whole lot more directly.
Great, and I was really asking that question to drive home one of the recommendations that I've made to you, and I do look forward to that presentation that's going to be taking place in LA Ricks in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, I will say that the CalFRN, staff, and Scott was actually one of them, did participate in the workshop with AT&T, specifically addressing some of the concerns from a public safety standpoint, and the response that we got back was very promising, and we're looking forward to further discussions on that.
Thank you.
I was just going to, I liked that last bullet that we started to talk about. Obviously, that was kind of there's some of us that were trying to digest what that meant, and we appreciate that you're trying to look out for those members or those agencies where people are, they buy their service and then they have to get reimbursed, and obviously that takes care of them in a good way. There's obviously some potential for abuse, and there's some, so there's some concern there, and that's what was kind of going through a lot of our minds when you were presenting that. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops, and hopefully we don't get to a point where there's a saturation or an issue that affects us, because it would obviously be hard to go backwards. So that's all.
Thank you.
I have to echo that sentiment. Because the term that you used was subscriber pay for family, I believe is what you actually said, and so that concerns me a little bit. This is supposed to be a public safety priority and preemption, and I don't see, I mean, I'd like to see the details on how you're going to prevent me from going in and buying a device for my wife under my name and/or my child, because I don't know how many devices you're going to let me buy under FirstNet, but my understanding is the more subscribers, the better, right? So if I buy 4 or 5 devices, and how are you going to limit that to truly public safety priority and preemption?
So if I did say it was a subscriber paid for a family, then I want to correct any statement that I made, which is subscriber paid is for a sworn public safety person. So I just want to make.
Relationship.
Yeah, and it's just the device. And there are audits done at within a 30-day period of the device, or the FirstNet account set up. And then there is an annual audit of that number in which it is confirmed by the agency that that person is still a sworn and not retired or no longer with the agency. So there is a system that I'd be happy to go through in more detail on how that is done, but we don't want folks taking, because the rates are great, we don't want, folks taking advantage if they're not, needed in the event of a congested traffic situation.
Understood. So when you say sworn,
It's a primary, so in the term, you're probably familiar with our terms for FirstNet, as we have primary users and we have extended primary users. At this time, only primary users are eligible for the subscriber paid offer, and they are only eligible to enroll one personal device in the subscriber paid plan. So primary users obviously are those first responders, so not just sworn officer, but it could be a firefighter, it could be police, EMS.
if I had a administrative assistant who had a CalFire ID, what's preventing them from showing that ID and getting a device?
So again, it would be going through the verification process to ensure, and if she walked into a retail store, it'd be from us checking with you to ensure that she's an eligible user. And then
So I
going
will
back
need
down.
somebody in my department validating their employment and
We use
their
a
status.
third-party vendor as well, and we can go into
Okay.
details about how
A
the
lot of,
third-party
a
vendor.
lot of tentacles here and potentially slippery slopes, so I just would like to see some of those details.
Maybe we could ask for you the next time the CalFRN meets to provide some more clarity on that validation process, because there's two things here. There's a potential for agencies to have an additional staffing requirement that they don't have now to do all this validation. So while it's potentially a good service, there's an implication there, and plus it could end up flooding a network with devices, because all the counts that we've seen were based on, from what we told, single device usage. This potentially doubles that. So what does that do to your network throughput models and your, what you're providing as far as bandwidth and throughput and priority and preemption for public safety? And then the way this plays out, when it doesn't work well, they call us first and ask what's going on. And you can imagine how fast we will call you, but that call comes to us first. And so that's why we just need this clarity so we can understand what's going on. Because the tool does not provide any ability for CalOES or any other agency to monitor what's going on. That functionality is not in there yet. And so we know that's on the roadmap, but so we're essentially flying blind if there was a potential problem.
Understood, Budge, and we'll be sure to cover that in the next CalFRN meeting.
Any other questions from the board?
I have one more. Can you commit to a date of when you'll have a statewide contract in place for FirstNet services?
I believe, Bud, you're familiar with all of the time and effort both of the organizations have been taking. The thing I would comment on, as long as we stop making changes on both sides, I would argue we're 30 days away.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a broadband services update by Budge.
All right, so I'm going to give an overview, and I'm going to focus on the things that we've been doing since the last meeting. So some of the content in here was in the last presentation. We do that in case somebody's tuned in for the first time. They've got the data, but I'm going to highlight the things that we've been doing since the last CalFRN board meeting. So this is an overview of what I'll be talking about. This first graphic, we've been sharing everywhere we go with everybody we talk to, and we found it's a really good tool to help people understand the difference between Next Gen 911, which is focused on getting information into the PSAP so that those that provide the help receive that data. Right now it's text and a voice call, but long-term it could be other data sources. The land mobile radio system is here to stay, so that's another piece of this, providing mission-critical voice. FirstNet and broadband services is the piece we're talking about, so really that's connecting back to the PSAP and enabling a pathway to get data from the PSAP out to the emergency responder, along with some other data applications that exist in the network. And then alerts and warnings is the other piece of the puzzle, which is yet a different path. So all of these converge in a public safety answering point in a PSAP, but they're unique and distinct and different. And so if you focus on just one of the four, you're going to be missing out. So this message has been really important as we communicate to those that are making these decisions about what FirstNet is and what it is not, and what it can do and what it's not going to do. So I encourage you, if you have any ability to talk to those within your organizations, police chiefs, fire chiefs, sheriffs, whoever, please contact us if you want to use this graphic. We encourage, and we'll send it to you immediately because we think it provides a lot of clarity. So, as has been stated, we have opted in, and we continue to get questions from agencies throughout the state. Does this mean I have to switch to AT&T? No, that's not what this means. So the questions are, I would say on a weekly basis, we still get that question asked of us. And so we're helping to provide clarity. There is a state contract in place. You heard the comment from Mark Rose with AT&T. We're working on that. I've got a slide on that later. On the CalOES team, I have 5 folks in our broadband services unit. They are funded under the SLIGP program, the State Local Implementation Grant Program. There are very restricted activities that they can do, and education is not one of those activities. So if you ask them for details about what FirstNet is, what AT&T is, what it can do, they can't answer those questions. We can, because Pat and I aren't funded under that, but those folks can't. So that's where we're really been partnering closely with FirstNet and AT&T to make sure that they are at these meetings, or when we get those questions, we forward them on to them. So that's the role of the SLIGP program. We do have an audit coming up on that, just so that you're aware, in the second week of October on the 11th. And so we'll be preparing for that, a summary of all of our activities that we've done in support of the grant. We've attended over 53, I think that number might be last week, and I think we've done a couple more since then, but 53 public safety outreach meetings, really to facilitate what CalOES's role is, what FirstNet's role is, what AT&T's role is, and these are ongoing. So anytime we are asked to attend, we go. These are everything from APCO meetings, 911 meetings, PSAP meetings, Sheriff's Association, Police Chiefs Association. There's a pretty long list here of folks that we've done. We also participate in the regional planning area meetings, which are part of the California statewide Interoperability Executive Council. So we participate in those. We did receive authorization from FirstNet to start gathering site data. So before we were only able to ask, where do you have coverage issues? Now we can actually start gathering information on sites. We know where the state sites are, and we have that data. So that question has been answered long ago, and we've shared that data. What we don't know, though, is the local entity. So when we ask them, where are your coverage gaps, the next question we now ask is, do you have sites that you have infrastructure on that would be potentials to fill in those gaps? And so we can coordinate that and use that data as possible locations for partnerships. Since they own the site, Obviously, CalOES cannot mandate that there's somebody enter into an agreement, but we can at least share the data if they allow us to. We're actively participating in Fleet Week and the communications exercise that's going on there. The other work we've been doing is we've included some FirstNet and broadband service type initiatives in the statewide communications interoperability plan. So I know we heard that AT&T said they solved interoperability. I'd like to see that plan solution because we don't think it's solved yet. There's a lot of remaining questions. So we forwarded that draft SKIP, that's the acronym SKIP, out to the CalFRN board, and we're asking for you to review that in the next week or two and get that feedback back to us. So we'd appreciate your insight on that. The other thing we're going to do is work with LA RICS and some of the work you've done with best practices on setting priority levels and tracking users in the network, because to our knowledge at this time, the FirstNet portal does not offer that capability, and it really becomes on the incident commander to manage those devices, but yet you don't have visibility into any of the agencies who are coming to that incident, nor does CalOES. So we really need some best practices in place on how to establish priority levels so that we don't run into an issue where we don't have any uplift headroom because everybody comes in at the highest priority possible. So those are some of the things that are included in that plan. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll move on here. All right. We've long stated that the NASBO contract, which is a nationwide contract, it just doesn't meet the state needs. So we've been working on getting these FirstNet services on CalNet. We've had, as Mark said, numerous, 30 meetings, a lot of meetings. And we know, we definitely appreciate, I know CDT is here, and I can say for CalOES, they're not waiting on us for anything. We're ready to take the next step and get this in place. And so I'm excited that 30 days seems very reasonable. We are no longer making any changes to the document. If there's an agency, though, that doesn't want to wait for that state contract, there's nothing preventing anybody from entering into direct negotiations with AT&T or any other vendor for broadband services. However, there are probably going to be some significant advantages to the state contract. This is what the timeline looks like. We were very optimistic at the last board and thought we'd be done in July. It's September. We're not done yet. We're hoping to have that done. 30 days, I think, is a great target. So that would be the time when that contract is in place for FirstNet services on a state contract. And that would be eligible for all state and local, as well as state agencies to use. So what CalOES has been doing, we're continuing to work with the counties and operational areas to answer as many questions as we can within, obviously, what we know and what we're allowed to say. There are some restrictions there. We've been working with AT&T. They sent us back a fairly long list of sites that are of interest to them, and we've been working through that. We definitely need this best practice document for prioritization of users. That's something that's really important. We've continued to ask questions about Next-Gen 911 integration and what that integration looks like both at the CAD and with Next-Gen 911, and there's just not a lot of details available right now with that. We're fairly early in the process. We've pushed since the beginning to make sure that applications are interoperable, and it's been a huge thing that we want to make sure goes forward. So that remains on our radar. We don't want an app that requires access to either a FirstNet core or a Verizon Public Safety core or anybody else's core in order for it to work. We truly want it to be interoperable. We see the challenge that would exist if there was an app that you must have access to a core, you're not subscribed to that particular vendor, and then on scene you arrive and there's some mission critical piece of data that you can't get access to, and that causes either loss of life or loss of property, and that would be a terrible situation to be in. So that's why we keep pushing this applications interoperability piece. We've had discussions on site hardening. We continue to see outages in disasters that result from either lack of redundant backhaul, lack of sufficient battery backup, lack of generator backup. Some of those are because the zoning and the location of those sites just don't allow for it, but we're going to continue to emphasize that the cellular network is not hardened to the standard that public safety is accustomed to compared to LMR sites, land mobile radio sites. So there's a difference there. And so we'll continue to push that awareness and really to continue to push forward. That would be the ultimate goal, that they all were hardened to that same level to be able to survive. We think an aggressive site hardening plan almost eliminates the need for deployables, except in situations where existing infrastructure is not there. There's a team, that I mentioned the 5, Shelley's here, and most of the rest of the team is here as well. We've assigned them one to a county and then one to handle the state agencies and the tribal representatives. So if there's someone who doesn't know who their contact is within Cal OES, let us know. And if FirstNet or AT&T is out in one of these areas and you need some support and help, that's really what this team is here for. With that, I think that's the updates for there, unless there's questions from the board.
Okay, any questions for Budge on broadband services? Then we'll move on to his statewide interoperability coordinator, SWIC update.
So this is an updated chart that reflects the current chairs and co-chairs in each of the 4 planning areas, as well as a visual graphic of where those planning areas are. These planning areas are meeting quarterly with one exception, the central planning area, since there's no one currently identified as the chair. We're working on that right now. So we have meeting schedules, probably one of the more significant events coming up. There's what they call a radio rodeo that's going on in the southern area down in Southern California. And that will be multiple counties that are participating, as well as the state. I think the date off the top of my head, November 13th, is that right? November 13th. So if you're interested in participating in that event in any way, shape, or form, please let us know. We do have technical assistance from the Office of Emergency Communications, and they will be there to be able to sign off task books for ComL and ComT. And so it's a fully vetted exercise. And let us know if you want more additional information on that. We've been working on the Cal IFOG update to get an electronic version. We're making good progress on the review of the documents that we need to be able to sign off on. Those of you who, when you download an app from the Google or from the Apple Store, and you just scroll through all that and click yes, it turns out a state agency, we can't just do that. We actually have to read every word and make sure we can click yes. And so we've been working on that. I already talked a little bit about the CalSkip and where we're at. The final version will be posted in October. This document becomes more important this year. There's actually a requirement in the Homeland Security Grant Program that if you do an emergency communications grant, you tie to either a SKIP objective, we have 11 of them, or a National Emergency Communications Plan goal or a SAFECOM goal. You have to identify something that you are in support of. And so this document is going to become important. So when you're reviewing it, please look at it from that perspective as you're planning your emergency communications grant applications over the next 2 years. The technical assistance requests are ongoing. These are the 5 that we get a year, that we get augmented from the Office of Emergency Communications. The bottom one there, the regional TICP, the Tactical Interoperable Communications Plan that's for the North, they actually had that meeting finally, and they're moving forward with that. So obviously, some of the wildfires affected the northern planning area's ability to get that moving forward. And I know we're doing one for the Bay Area as well. I think you had your meeting as well. Yep. So, the documents are not finalized. It's a process, but both of those documents are moving forward. Additional requests that regional communications assessment. We're making some progress on that. That has to do with P25 radio systems, the ability for one P25 system to talk to another P25 system across the standard interface. The ComL course was conducted in the Bay Area. I think you had close to 30 that went through that exercise. And so that was a success. And then I already mentioned the radio rodeo exercise that's coming up in November. So some of the things that we're working on, we're obviously, the coordination that's required for these multi-agency responses, and you see some of the challenges based on the expectation of what we need to do versus the tool sets we have to accomplish that mission. And so that's really what a lot of our conversations are, trying to align the tool sets with the mission capability that we know needs to be out there. And so this slide just kind of shows some of the ongoing efforts that we've got as we look forward long-term for the next couple of reporting periods. So this slide is here for the board to weigh in on activities that you see that might be missing that you want us to start looking at. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Pat.
Thank you, Budge. Any questions for Budge on this WIC report? Okay, our next item up is a report on the PSAC by Barry Frazier. And I would like to take a moment to thank Barry for many years of his participation as a CalFRN board member. Barry is retiring. You can't do that, just a 2-year commitment. Barry is retiring, and Corey is now the general manager of the Bay-Rex Joint Powers Authority. So,
That
Barry,
is
thank you,
correct,
sir.
and thank you, Pat, for those kind words, and thank you to the CalFRN board generally. It has been a very pleasurable experience working with you all over the past 3 or 4 years. I think we've accomplished a lot. I think this is a very strong group in terms of experience and skill sets and capabilities, and I hope that the state and CalOS continues to utilize you as an important resource as we go forward. And actually, moving on to my PSAC report, I'm going to talk a little bit about some possible things that the CalFRN board might be called on to weigh in on. We've talked a lot about many of these things already in terms of priority preemption, uplift, and those types of things. The PSAC for the past several months has been holding monthly webinars on various topics that are of importance to FirstNet and AT&T, and that they were looking at the PSAC to provide feedback on and information from the expertise on our advisory group. We had webinars on quality of service, priority and preemption. Then we had one on the network status tool, which is part of the local control portal. And then this last month, we had a webinar on the Uplift tool, also part of the local control portal. And it's becoming evident, both with the PSAC and with me personally, that there is going to be a real need for governance, for policy development, and for thinking through how some of these things work, and making sure that we implement these processes and assign officers and perform uplifts in a way that doesn't impact the network or harm our first responders. And I think that maybe CalFRN can have a role in developing some guidelines or overall policies for the state to do that. A lot of this has been talked about, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but in terms of priority, there are 4 different tiers of priority that can be, you can assign your officers, your staff to. Which priority level is an important discussion, and the important discussion also is that no one needs to be tier 1, the highest priority level, all the time. If we have that, then the network really it doesn't serve any purpose. So there needs to be policies and guidelines for assigning officers in the lower tier levels with the understanding that they can be uplifted if the need occurs through the local control tool. There are questions around the Uplift tool itself and how that can be utilized. And we've talked a little bit about this already today, but one example that we talked about with the PSAC was the the possibility of uplifting what are called extended primary users, which are your public utilities, which are your Caltrans, could be public works departments, who may need critical communications to perform some service during an incident or a disaster. For instance, if a utility worker needs to get a electric line repaired to some critical infrastructure, you may need to have that person uplifted to priority level 1 during that time that's needed to communicate with them. The question is, who does the uplift for extended primary users, and how do you prevent that uplift from actually impacting other first responders who are working on the same scene? So again, that really calls for some thinking and some organization and guidelines, policies to develop for how these types of things take place. The other question is high bandwidth apps. Streaming video, those types of things, we know that those applications take up, they're bandwidth hogs, right? Currently, there is no app, my understanding is from the PSAC, there is no application priority on FirstNet. So what I'm saying is that a tier 1 responder and a tier 4 responder, if the tier 1 responder is watching a YouTube video, tier 4 responder is looking at a critical webcam, there's no difference in that bandwidth for that application. That will change in the future. There will be the ability, I think, in the future to prioritize applications. But currently, that's not. So we need to think about policies and procedures for managing high bandwidth apps. We talked about the incident commanders being or not having the information that they need when they are assuming, say, a unified command role, managing several different agencies. How are they going to know which agency members are on FirstNet, which ones are need to be uplifted, and what is the information, the phone numbers for those key personnel to allow them to be uplifted? The ICS structure, it doesn't, there is nothing in ICS at this time to deal with broadband or priority and preemption. And we, in the Bay Area, we went through a ComL course just recently, as you mentioned. Very little talked about how to uplift or anything about FirstNet, and that really needs to change because the ComLs are the ones that are going to be having to figure this out in an incident. And so, there's a need for governance, a need for development of policies, and also a need for awareness and probably training to help our first responders understand how to use these tools. So that's what we've been discussing with the PSAC, but I think it's important that CalFRN think about these things, sounds like you already are, and work on how there can be statewide guidelines, which can then can flow down to local and regional policies that can be developed through BayRICS or LA-RICS, and in that way. So I'm going to stop. I will say that next month we are going to tackle the Internet of Life-Saving Things with the PSAC meeting. And I would just, again, ask Budge to, in your great slide where you've got the PSAP and you've got all the different pieces that are flowing into the PSAP, you're going to have to find a little space for Internet of Things data, because that information is going to become more critical. It's got to go somewhere. My suspicion, it's going to go to the PSAP, and it's going to be one more piece of information and one more task for PSAP operators to deal with. So you might want to find a place and carve out a little Internet of Things on that slide too. So that's where we are. Unless there are any questions, that's all I have. Thank you.
Got a question. So are there any other states that have started to tackle this problem, or is California the only one looking at it?
I'm sure that each state is beginning to look at it. They're probably at much different levels of planning how to deal with this. Some may be farther along. Some may have not even begun thinking about it. I really don't know about other states, but I do know that California, because of our size, our diversity, and our unique needs, we got to tackle this sooner rather than later, because it's just something that if we don't address it early on, we're going to end up with an incident or a situation, and it's all going to fall apart. And we don't want that to happen, right? So,
Any other questions from the board? I do have one, and that's Barry, with your retirement, are you going to be staying on PSAC?
I will be on, so PSAC, my PSAC appointment is through a national association, so it's separate from my work with BayRICS.
Right.
My goal is to stay on the PSAC through the end of my current term, which I think ends in maybe February of next year. And then I'm going to advocate actually to have Corey, who's also a member of the association that I represent, to take my place. But so I will remain on the PSAC for a few more months, and but then we'll be eventually rotating off.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments for Barry?
Barry, I just want to say thank you for your service, and really appreciate your input and the quality work that you've done over these last few years. And I just want to wish you good luck across the board, and we look forward to seeing you on the regular updates in your other capacity, at least till that term's out.
Thank you, Mitch, and likewise. I appreciate all the support from this group.
And Pat and I will second that, because we can tell you how great retirement is.
Yeah.
Well, everyone knows I did retire once already, so this is actually the second time around. Who knows how many more times I'll end up
So did
doing
we.
it. Right.
Paul's gone, so I don't think we have any public comment cards, so, Paul, any public comment cards? Okay, we have no comment cards, so we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We
So
can
moved.
sit here all night.
I so move to adjourn.
Okay.
Make a motion.
Motion by Chief Guerrero, do we have a second? Second. Okay, second by Corey Reynolds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is any opposed? Motion carries, we're adjourned. Thank you.
All right.